Good morning. It's Pop again, Dennis Murray, and this is Popcast 86, Nature's Wisdom, Part 36. I'm kind of really excited today. Um, I've been struggling for some weeks to figure out um, practical applications of the new view of nature's wisdom that I have formed for myself, and I hope some of it you've found interesting enough to, to consider it for yourself. And, principally awe and the gift of each other and the view of death, hate, necessity, and unfairness as part of our gifts. Um, and I've been struggling to find some way to describe what I think we would be trying to do to apply it practically. And in all honesty, a couple of weeks ago, um, when I first asked myself that question, my answer was, I haven't the faintest idea. No, this is this is both a good thing and a bad thing. I'm not exactly getting paid by the word here. I'm not a philosopher who has a contract to produce, X quantities of wisdom within X weeks. Um, I'm not even a, professor or somebody who's blogging for for a living. So I don't have to come up with answers to good questions. But I kind of would like to. Good question kind of calls for a good answer. And so I thought to myself, well, gee, all of the work gets down, like philosophy always does. So what are you going to do next? And Arthur C. Clarke, who, wrote those brilliant books in the world of science fiction way back when in the 50s, said that all of life and all of philosophy ultimately gets down to one simple question: what are you going to do next? And I felt like that was a pretty good question. So, am I to encourage us to make some practical use out of our new view of nature's wisdom? And I thought, well, okay, let's start writing and reading and thinking and see what comes up. And, in a little while, I found these books to talk about encouraging books like, oh goodness, I forgot what all ones we talked about now in the last couple of weeks, but there's been quite a few. And then I found these negative books about, what not to do, like the one on hate and the true believer. Um, and so, starting to get some ideas about, the what not to do. But it just occurred to me this morning, and I'm frankly really excited about it, um, that what I would like to do is to create a new civic practice. I would like, in effect, just as we now say the Pledge of Allegiance, or we sing the Star Spangled Banner at almost all public gatherings, or quite a great large number of them. Um, I'd like to add a brief moment of civic celebration of the sense of the sacredness in our psychology and of the gift of each other, um, because the sacredness is where all our energy comes from to live life, and the gift of each other is where we get the extra hope and encourage and comfort and support we need to face death, hate, necessity, and unfairness. Um, Not to mention all the usual troubles in life not connected to those things. And I, so I guess it really is interesting when you come up with an idea of what it is you would like to make happen that hasn't happened yet. I would like a civic practice to be started that becomes pretty routine. And I think that the civic practice would remind us of things we have in common and thereby diminish some of the great divide. And it would also remind us of a comfort that we have that we haven't really focused on. We haven't really seen the gift of each other as a second gift as great as the gift of life. It's, at best also ran. It's, noticed, but it's not celebrated. Its appreciation is far smaller than should be because it's very much connected to the great divide, the anger, the hatred, the complete division of every aspect of life. So whether you wear a mask in the face of the coronavirus depends on which party you belong to. I mean, let's face it, how could wearing a mask have anything to do with which political party you belong to? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense that there's a connection between whether you wear a mask or whether you are Democrat or Republican. It should have to do with health and circumstances. And it might have to do with your personal point of view about things. One of my sons, Riley, is, what's the word for those people? He's, oh goodness sake, I'm having a senior moment. There's a word for a person who sort of doesn't like being told what to do. And he very much doesn't like being told what to do. So he's the sort of fellow that wouldn't wear a mask as an expression of his personal, approach to the world. I mean, it took him a long time to start using a seatbelt and wearing a helmet, when he rides his bike. When he goes skiing, that sort of thing. Fine. So there's people that have, points of view about, I don't like being told what to do. There's people that are, looking for the latest word from the health people about you should do this or don't do that, and they follow it slavishly. So it should have to do with your personality. What the hell does it have to do with whether you're a Democrat or Republican? I can't imagine. I don't see any connection at all, truly. And in other words, my point being that every aspect of life has become associated with the Great Divide. Not just things like, are you a Southern Baptist or, do you go to some hippie church in New England? No, that was too broad a generalization. And in fact, there's probably Southern Baptists in both sides of the Great Divide. And there's certainly hippies. Well, there used to be hippies on both sides of the Great Divide. Who knows? The point being that the idea of a civic practice is all the more important than previously because every single aspect of life has become part of the Great Divide. I can't imagine. I mean, Lord, all the political institutions, understandably, they're political, so they're part of political parties. But most of the religious institutions are involved in one side or the other of this thing. And a huge number of veterans organizations. Goodness, I mean, can you name an important part of our, social structure that's not somehow on one side or the other of the Great Divide? Food, I guess. Now, people on both sides of the Great Divide eat the same foods. Maybe you like Southern fried, and maybe you like barbecued grilled. Maybe you like oil and vinegar, and maybe you like blue cheese. Thus far, at least, as far as I know, food hasn't become part of the Great Divide. Okay, so I'll give you that one. But can you name another? Sports are, at least a part of sports at the beginning, where they play the anthem. It's now become politicized. Not to make any comment about the decision to politicize it, but my comment is that it has become politicized. And, I mean, um, I truly, I can't think of a major part of life aside from food that hasn't become politicized. And who knows, that could come up soon. If it turns out that one or the other of the candidates hates, fried foods, good, no, we could then have a food fight to go with all the other fights. So my point is that a civic practice is really needed that somehow reminds us of our common sense of the sacred at the heart of our personality, and reminds us that we have the gift of each other to give us comfort and support in the face of death, hate, necessity, and unfairness. And this would lessen our isolation, our sense of being disconnected from each other, our anger and fear and seeming lack of comfort and support. So it could lessen the Great Divide very directly um, by giving us a little lift when we need one. And it's a lift we all share. Uh, and, it the thing about um, this proposed civic practice is that seeing the sense of the sacred in our psychology is factual. It's an inference or intuition about what's going on inside us, but it's not based on a religious belief. It's it's not hard science either. What's going on deep inside us is beyond the realm of science. But I use a practical reasoning to look at things that science and psychology, which is for the most part, when dealing with the depths of us, not a science, um, are beginning to assess as real facts about us, um, so that it doesn't defend an atheist or an agnostic or a member of any religion to say, yes, I share in my psychology a sense of the sacred with all other humans. It's a part of our inheritance as humans. And it's wonderful to discover that we all share this. And of course, some of us immediately personify it and create a religion. But underneath the personification, underneath the religion, is this common psychological experience of the sense of the sacred. Seeing that as separate from religion allows us all to celebrate it, whether or not we believe in a God, whether or not we have a religion. Everybody has a sense of the sacred in their psychology. Some personify it and say it's an external reality, and its name is, pick one of the names of gods. There's a lot to choose from. And and then the gift of each other. I mean, that doesn't even have the kind of overtones about, agnosticism or atheism. The gift of each other is either something that you see in our psychology or it's not. And, philosophers can help us talk about it. Psychologists can help us talk about it. Um, Even religions can say, yeah, we think, the golden rule, which is essentially deeply connected to the gift of each other, be a gift to each other is another way of phrasing the golden rule. Um, yeah, that's at the heart of almost all religions. So that would be some further evidence. But again, it doesn't depend on faith in an external divinity or any particular religion to see that we are a gift to each other. So viewing it as a civic practice that we could use as we use the Pledge of Allegiance or the singing of the national anthem at, all in various opportunities. And at home, when we have family meals, some families say grace before meal. Some families just take a moment to celebrate being together and being grateful for, having food together. But we could all add, to whatever practice we currently have, another practice of saying, let's take note that we all share as a part of our genetic inheritance of our inheritance as humans, um, this sense of the sacred, and we all share the gift of each other. And let's be grateful for both because we need them both to face, the daily difficulties of life, and in particular, the things that really concern us about life: death, hate, necessity, and unfairness. So if you started observing this in your personal life, in your family life, you spoke to your friends about it, and approached local civic groups about it, service clubs, etc., went to veterans organizations and said, gee, eventually you get enough people that you can approach the Chamber of Commerce. And next thing you know, you can start writing to politicians and say, well, gee, I've been voting for you for a long time. Here's something I've learned about recently, which I think you ought to think about. It wouldn't kill us if on the floor of legislative arenas, before people start to take their axes out and run charging headlong against each other, full of hate, we could stop and celebrate the sense of the sacred in each out of us that gives us the energy to live, and the gift of each other that gives us the extra comfort and support we need to live. And, who knows? In due time, all of the public events we have, NASCAR, football games, basketball games, could begin with this brief thing in daily school. You could add this in front of or after the Pledge of Allegiance or the national anthem. And of course, things become routine and nobody pays attention to them anymore. Imagine some years hence, the thing is just sort of a ritual that nobody really, remembers why we do it or sees much to it. Oh yeah, ho hum. Here comes that guy again, or here comes that recording over the school PA system, and etc. So I mean, it's always possible that what happens to most things will happen to this thing too. It loses its power to stir the heart and to be a real help to people over time when it becomes taken for granted. So things always have to be refreshed, and they always have to be renewed in some way. And, there has to be change, which is always difficult to figure out when, how, and, why don't I hate you for trying to change what I think shouldn't be changed? But that's a condition of human life. You can't decline to do something that would be a big help to our current circumstance where we're just mired in this hatred of this great divide, just because in due time, this help will get stale and not be much help, and we'll need something else for help. That's fine. That's the way life is. That's a couple of generations hence for them to worry about. And it's true. I mean, every generation has its own worries, things that, their grandparents took for granted are now a worry. Hell, we got new diseases every year. Why shouldn't we have, there's nothing, you can't escape from change, even though it's often painful. It's not ideal in the sense of, oh, wow, it's going to make everybody better by Thursday. And it's also not ideal in the sense that it can't escape the usual fate of all things human. Eventually, it becomes so routine, it loses any real power in the lives of people. But that's fine. In the meantime, it's something that merely trying to bring to the community's attention achieves part of the purpose. It makes you feel like you're trying a practical way to live the gift of each other, to be a gift to each other, to try to bring to each other this comfort and support that recognizing how important we are to each other brings. And you're trying to bring it to the attention of the community for the shared sacredness, which will take a lot of the heat out of the Great Divide. We'll still disagree about almost everything, except that we love hamburgers. I hope we'll still agree we love hamburgers. And okay, and I hear my little voice saying, yeah, and French fries. Don't forget French fries. Okay, so I'll give you that. So hamburger and French fries. We'll still agree that we love those, but we'll disagree about everything else. It's just that we'll do it with less anger, less hate, and less fear of being alone and isolated and needing to have companions who join us in hating people on the other side for comfort. We can take comfort from both sides because we're all human, even though we disagree about all kinds of stuff, and we'll continue to do so. So it's not like the divisions go away, it's that a good deal of the hatred gets lessened and a more sense of commonality gets increased. And so I'm pretty excited because just figuring out some conceivable answer to the question, is there a practical way to apply nature's wisdom? Figuring out by saying, well, gee, here's a possibility. It could be a civic practice. That's, you know, good for me. I get a pat on the back. That's an answer. You got another one? You got a better one? I hope so. Eventually, somebody's going to come up with a heck of a lot of answers, and some of them are going to be a lot better. But you got to get the ball rolling, and that means you got to find at least one candidate for practical application of the day. So I'm excited. I got a lot of stuff in my notes. I got a lot of stuff in my notes. I'm very, very pleased. I'm going to have to figure out how to narrow it down because I am going to stop after my birthday, after I've done my 100th podcast. I'm going to take a week or so. So I need to reach a good stopping place. I will return after that, refreshed and renewed with some more ideas. My daughter Betsy has kindly offered to write a series of questions about certain of the Popcasts that have things in them she would like some more information about. She didn't really understand or get the point. And then I could, read her questions and respond, and that would, add a couple of weeks of one hopes interesting podcasts and start giving other people's, insight and questions. And then I have a lot more books to talk about, and I want to distinguish. I've found that something we're all kind of familiar with, at least vaguely from school days, called transcendentalism. That in some regards, I've been influenced by that. It has core beliefs. Let me go find over here and refresh my recollection. It has core beliefs in the inherent goodness of people and nature. So I'm with that. And as you know, I want to repeat almost every time we see people do evil to each other, and it makes us think, no, we couldn't be inherently good. How could this be? And my response to that is, yeah, there is goodness in us. It calls us to live it, and we have the right to walk away, to turn away. It's a call. It's not a command. We're not robots. We're people. We have choice. That's a choice we get to make. So the fact that some choose doesn't prove that we're not inherently good. It proves that we're able to turn away from our own selves, to our great detriment, of course. We do ourselves enormous harm when we walk away from ourselves, from the call to live the gift of each other and the call to feel the sacredness of life. So the transcendentalists also felt that society corrupted the purity of the individual. Don't agree at all. I think that they completely failed to appreciate this incredible aspect of our sociality, that subsequently, transcendentalism was 1820s, 30s, and partly the 40s. Um, a lot's been learned since then, and they didn't have any idea about living as bonded pairs in society 2 million years ago. At that, in the 1820s and 30s when transcendentalism was being created. Um, so, of course, it's going to have an effect. Our appreciation of sociality is hugely different than they would have been able to imagine. So, really don't agree with their viewing the individual as being corrupted by society. And they also said that people are at their best when truly self reliant and independent. Um, I got to moderate that. Uh, People are at their best when they are self in relation to others. When you're only self, it leads to a sense of loss. You miss the gift of each other. And in the face of death, hate, necessity, and unfairness, you need the gift of each other. So, and an overemphasis on self reliance and independence, in my view, is a failure to appreciate our sociality. Same as the thing about how society corrupts the individual. We need society, and we also need self. So you have to balance that. There's a role for self-reliance, a role for independence, but also a role for being a gift to each other, both giving and taking from each other. It's complicated, of course, a little more complicated than the transcendentalists were able to imagine. They also emphasized intuition over things that could be proven by the scientific method. Okay, there. Certainly, I'm very much in agreement with that. Um, so to me, it's going to be helpful to be able to talk about uh, a literary and spiritual movement uh, in American history that a lot of people have heard of, at least. And I can show the parts of it that I am, indebted to and feel, to share, and the parts of it that I propose that we change because we've learned things they didn't really know and couldn't really know since the, nearly 180 years ago since they started putting this stuff together. Um, but there's a lot of things that are worth looking at that were in the transcendentalist traditions that they were themselves representing earlier traditions, um, including romanticism um, and certain aspects of biblical criticism and skepticism, and aspects of important philosophers from prior years. So that there's a lot of good, rich stuff that they found and put together in a certain way to create their movement. And so we'll take a look at that stuff too. It'll give a richer appreciation to us of where I'm suggesting we need to be, where I think nature's wisdom is as seen anew in the light of all that's been learned in recent centuries. Okay, so that's way too much for one day. A lot of stuff. Bob's just bursting with excitement, and I really was unable. I just, I was popping my buttons, and not from weight, from excitement and enthusiasm. So it's a good thing. Okay, take care. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.